Our last episode ran a little long, so I want to try to move with some urgency on these two issues. That said, I do want to take a moment to appreciate Claremont's ability to tell a long-form narrative. His stories haven't really flowed into each other here. He's just kind of shoved ideas, concept, and characters down our throat when he felt like it. But in doing so, he has set up stories that can then be explored at a later date. So far, he's used the story of Heroes Reborn: The Return to create Roma's desire to police Franklin, who can alter reality at will. He then used Issue 5's Science Symposium to establish that something is messing with the fabric of reality, and that's further cemented by Roma's data crystal to Reed in Issue 10. He also established that Genosha is a thing, and with Mr. Fantastic's kidnapping last issue, he's brought that particular story to the forefront of the book. We're going to see a couple of things that Claremont has established along the way finally get addressed here, so I'll stop wasting all of our time. My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown episode 12.6, It All Comes Together. Issue 11 opens, not in the present, but in the past, actually. We see a not quite yet fantastic version of the Fantastic Four in their flight suits as they prepare to board their spacecraft. This particular plot thread, which basically recounts the adventure that made them superpowered, runs through roughly the first half of this issue. It is paired with modern-day scenes as the remaining three members of the Fantastic Four investigate the abduction of Reed Richards. They had been called by police detective Charlotte Jones, whose witness reports place Mr. Fantastic at the scene of this super battle. Sue pulls out a device that scans the area for super-powered energy signatures, and she finds a fading energy trail that leads to a payphone. While Sue's device searches Reed's large database of super-powered energy signatures, Ben and Detective Jones approach the payphone. Ben suggests that they trace the call, and sure enough, the last call was placed to a Genoshan phone number. Sue confirms that as her device recognizes Pipeline's teleportation effect, so at least they know where they're going. Before they leave, though, the government has sent Valerie Cooper, the Special Presidential Assistant for National Security and Metahuman Affairs, to give them a PowerPoint presentation. Val is a living exposition machine, catching the Fantastic Four and us, the readers, up on the history of Genosha. I covered this already, but let's go over it one more time for new people. Genosha was built on the back of mutant slaves. The X-Men helped those slaves to revolt and demand freedom and equality, and there's been an ongoing civil war between those forces and the government forces for years now. According to Val, a new agent has recently begun to use the war as cover for developing new weapons and tactics. She guesses that this is why Genosha kidnapped Reed. They need an edge to defeat whoever is manipulating events, and they hope that edge is the genius of Reed Richards. Boy, are you guys gonna have egg on your face. The US government doesn't know who this third party is, but they sure would like to see them removed. Things were bad enough in Genosha. They don't need this new wrinkle. Otherwise, though, the United States cannot support, condone, or have anything to do with the rescue of Reed, who is a private citizen that has been kidnapped by a foreign power. If the Fantastic Four intend to rescue Reed, then they're on their own. I'm not sure why the rest of the Fantastic Four didn't hear Reed's fight to begin with, though. Sure, they were indoors, and Reed's taxi ride did take him a distance down the street. There are reasons why the Fantastic Four may have not heard the scuffle that I kinda have to buy. But the Fantastic Four are living in a warehouse, so I kind of doubt how well it has been soundproofed. Plus, come on, man, this was a super battle. There were energy blasts and explosions and the smashing of things. None of the Fantastic Four noticed any of that. We have been shown that the kitchen is just inside the main entrance of Pier 4, which is right next to the street, so I think that Ben and Sue might have heard something. And I don't believe that New York traffic would sit quietly and wait for an abandoned taxicab to get out of their way while there's a super fight going on. There would be honking and cursing, and there'd be a whole shebang about it. There's no way the Fantastic Four wouldn't have heard this. But okay, so they didn't. And that's fine, I guess. Despite not being a fan of that aspect of the story, I do like how the team tracked Reed down. I kind of sort of doubt that Sue would just happen to have a residual energy tracker on her, but hey, the Fantastic Four have seen some weird stuff over the years, and their suits have all kinds of gadgets and gizmos, so why not, I guess. But having that device lead them to the phone and then using a simple *69 to track the call back was simple and clever, and I like it. It also helps to show that Ben Grimm isn't just a big, strong, tough guy. He does have a pretty good degree of reasonable logic going on. I've spoken about Claremont cementing this volume of the Fantastic Four directly back into the Marvel Universe, and the appearances of Detective Jones and Val Cooper are another sign of that. The Good Detective was a recurring character in X-Factor Volume 1, where she briefly dated Archangel for a time and has, on occasion, teamed up with the various X-Peoples to battle various threats. Val Cooper appeared infrequently in Uncanny X-Men pretty much throughout the 80s, and was X-Factor's direct liaison with the government in the early 90s. Obviously, both of these characters are X-Men concepts that have once more been brushed off and adopted into the Fantastic Four's book. They fit their roles well, though I am most assuredly not complaining here. Because what I am going to complain about is Val showing up because I'm not sure why she did. From a writing perspective, Val showed up in order to give us and the Fantastic Four more background on Genosha, and that works. It's fine. But Val really has no in-continuity reason to show up. When one of the Fantastic Four get kidnapped or captured, the team traditionally just runs off to save them. They don't call the government and ask them to do it for them. Nor should the government know that Genosha was involved in this incident yet, which is a big leap in logic that I suppose I could make after Detective Jones filed her police report and maybe Genosha was flagged, so the government decided to get involved. But even then, I feel like that would take time, and the Fantastic Four wouldn't wait around waiting for that to happen. So then why is Val here? Did she just feel like swinging by the pier and taking in the sights? Did the Fantastic Four call her and ask for aid? Was she, like, watching the news and recognized reports about Genosha or something? I mean, I don't need the world's greatest reason here, Mr. Claremont, but I would like something. So the Fantastic Three say their goodbyes, leaving Franklin in the care of Alyssa, Alisonde, and Detective Jones. Oh, and Puppy. They pilot the Pogo plane into the lower atmosphere and then wait for the Earth to rotate underneath them. While they wait, they chat, and everyone finally acknowledges that Reed changed after his encounter with Crucible in issue 5. Sue feels the most guilty about the situation. She recognized the change in her husband immediately, but, well, she was really enjoying it. Reed was spending more time with her, with Franklin, and was, let's face it, folks, a better husband and father during that time. And while Ben can sympathize with that, he wants to know how Reed feels about this change, about this loss. And what about Reed's responsibility to the Fantastic Four, and, by extension, the world? It's heavy stuff, man. This is a story moment that I really appreciate, though. Claremont has spent the past 5 issues, which is 5 months in publication time, letting this problem build to the point where it's at. We've gotten to see its positive and negative effects, both as a team and as a family, and I'm super glad that Claremont got a chance to explore that idea. Before the Fantastic Three can talk anymore, though, a sudden explosion rocks the Pogo plane. Using an invisible plane wing and Ben's skills as a pilot, the trio manage a pretty decent crash landing. Sue's force field protects them all from any damage, but unfortunately, the Pogo plane is toast. After all the work that Ben did in order to upgrade it and then get it certified, he is pissed. Whoever shot down his bird is gonna pay for it. The one who shot down the bird approaches the team calmly. She is a woman with golden skin and a purple corset with gartered stockings on. Her hair looks like octopus tentacles. I'm not sure what is going on there. Anyways, this is Aisha, she who must be obeyed. The Fantastic Three immediately start swinging, but whatever Aisha is, she totally outclasses them. Aisha bats aside the Human Torch, then molecularly disintegrates a chunk of debris that the Thing was going to throw at her, and then she swats the Thing aside. The Invisible Woman does some good against Aisha as she traps the Golden Woman in a force field bubble, but then Aisha feeds the Human Torch more energy than his body can handle. This causes his powers to rage out of control and consume him. Whoa. This distracts the Invisible Woman enough that she releases her force field. As the Thing recovers from his own strike, Aisha then creates and sicks an army of winged goblins on him. Their sharp claws tear and scrabble at the Thing's stony body, eventually pulling him apart, like winged piranhas or something. With only the Invisible Woman left standing and alive, Aisha turns to her now. With a thought, Aisha commands her to go away. The Invisible Woman's body begins to turn into bubbles, popping until there is nothing left. Well, alrighty then, holy smokes. That's not exactly the Fantastic Four arrive in Genosha and kick the door in and then fight some jerks that I had been expecting. Who the flippin' floop is Aisha, and what in God's name is she doing here? Well, that's a complicated answer. You see, Aisha is another established character and concept, but I'm not sure how she went from what she last was before this issue to who she is now. So, for now, I'm going to hold off on her background so that I can better present Claremont's story and critique his story of who she is now. For now, we know that Aisha appears to either manipulate reality or have such advanced energy manipulations that she can alter physical objects at a molecular level. And given how quickly she took out the experienced Fantastic Three, I don't know how anyone in Genosha stands against her. Oh, and just for the character's sake, Aisha stays calm throughout this battle. She's threatening, sure, but she isn't enjoying this fight or reveling in the destruction of her enemies. She is just utterly confident in her powers and kind of detached, honestly. Almost like this fight is beneath her. When she says that her tagline is, "She who must be obeyed," Aisha believes that. And given this display of power, I kinda don't know how anyone can argue against it. Given how calm I am in the face of the Fantastic Three's utter and complete destruction, you're probably thinking that they aren't dead. And of course they aren't dead. This is comics, baby. No one kills 3/4 of the Fantastic Four. A fourth or half of the Fantastic Four, sure, but not 3/4. Instead, the Fantastic Three return to consciousness, and they are looking at themselves when they do so. Or, at least, they're looking at their own bodies. Crucible greets them and introduces them to their new bodies. Johnny is in the older, pudgy body of Harry Soong. Sue has the Hindi Farisa Mansoor, while Ben is trapped in Jomo Kimane's body, a tall, thin black man. The team quickly guesses that Crucible has mind-swapped them as part of a greater plan to mind-swap normal folks into super-powered bodies. This would create an army of super-powered soldiers that owe their powers and allegiance to Crucible, as well as eliminate those superheroes who would stand against him, eventually. And honestly, the heroes aren't impressed. They've heard this kind of crap before, and they've always beaten the one crapping it. Crucible then grabs Sue and Ben by the throat, hefting them into the air. This needs to happen. For the world to survive the trials that are coming, humanity needs to be tested. They must pass this Crucible. Johnny steps forward, begging for Crucible to warn the Human Torch not to ignite his flames. But the mental stress is too much for Soong's body. Johnny clutches at his chest and falls to the ground, fighting to calm his mind. Crucible releases the other two and glares at Johnny. What is the point of having superpowers if you don't use them? Crucible, Aisha, and their guards leave the room. They have some tests to run. The now Unfantastic Three are left in their own room, carefully watched by security cameras. Experienced adventurers that they are, the Unfantastic Three guess that they're being watched. Johnny immediately starts to freak out about their situation, jealous of the young, healthy bodies that Ben and Sue have. Sue reminds him that this is temporary. They're going to figure this out. Ben is kinda happy about it, though. Right now, he isn't a gigantic rock monster anymore, and, that's pretty great. In a surprisingly cruel move, Ben actually shoves Sue away from him. Johnny snaps at that and charges at Ben, demanding that he leave his sister alone. But Ben sidesteps the charge and punches Johnny in the gut. The older body of Harry Soong crumples to the floor, gasping for breath. Sue rushes to her brother's side, shouting that he's having a heart attack. In the next room, one of the men watching the prisoners suddenly sits up. He shouts that they have a medical emergency, and, along with a small squad of guards, they rush into the room of our heroes. The medic rolls Johnny over, looking for a heartbeat, and discovers that he's faking it. The Unfantastic Three beat the absolute crap out of their captors, gather up the bodies, and then book it. Johnny knows that the first time that he ignited his flames, he had no point of reference for how much was too much power, and so he went supernova. Fearing the same experience for whoever now has his body and his powers, he insists that they can't leave the guards to just burn. With their new burdens in arm, the Unfantastic Three head to an elevator and manic press that down button. Once they're in the sub-basement, Johnny uses the building's communication systems to contact Crucible. I'm not sure how he does this, but whatever. Let's assume that Genosha has room-to-room video communications and a somehow easy-to-reference way of finding Crucible. Why not? We find Crucible and the body-swapped Fantastic Three preparing to test their powers for the first time. Johnny begs Crucible not to do this, but Crucible pushes on. He orders his torch to flame on. The young man does so, and the top of the building that they're in explodes. The Unfantastic Three pile into an ambulance and drive away at high speeds, trying to outrace the explosion that is now heading down the elevator shaft. While they do beat that explosion, they are also racing into unfamiliar streets that have been shattered by war. They drive off of a collapsed road and are slammed to a halt. I mentioned way back at the start of this issue that Claremont had interwoven the initial adventure of the Fantastic Four into this story, demonstrating how they got their powers. While sure, you can guess that this was partially to educate readers on that experience, its main focus was on Johnny. Claremont was establishing that Johnny went Nova the first time, setting up this swapped torches experience and explosion here at the end. This is a pretty nice detail that I like. Claremont has been very conscious of how Johnny's powers work and how dangerous they could be. This is like moving into a new apartment and turning on the shower for the first time while you stand under it. You never know how strong that water's going to be or how hot it's going to be. I applaud this story move. I also love the Unfantastic Three's escape. The body swap part of this story is a Claremont cliché, used so often as to have lost meaning. But Claremont does it often because it works. While having superpowers is great, what really makes the Fantastic Four heroes is their cunning, their bravery, and their compassion. Even without superpowers, they choose to do the right thing, like saving the very guards who had imprisoned them. I am a little annoyed at how casually they went into the fake fight maneuver simply because it feels like it comes out of nowhere from a story perspective. It just escalates so fast, and I'm so used to the Fantastic Four's relationships that this moment feels uneven. Ben would never push Sue. But when a group of characters has been adventuring together as long as the Fantastic Four have, it does make some degree of sense that they would pick up on each other's cues and just keep rolling with it in order to escape. I'm also not really a fan of Crucible's plan here. One of the things that Genosha did to its mutants as part of the bonding process that enslaved them was to shave their head, assign them a number identity instead of a name, and encase them in a bodysuit. These suits cover from neck to toe and are skin tight, a visual sign of their slavery. And the 3 bodies that our cast are imprisoned in are wearing those kind of bodysuits. So, are these 3 mutates then? Because I don't know why Crucible would take the Fantastic Four out of their own superpowered bodies and then put them into other superpowered bodies. That doesn't make sense to you folks, right? That's not just me, yeah? Using the mutates would make some amount of sense, as they would be available in relatively large numbers in Genosha, but it doesn't really make sense otherwise. We also haven't seen how Crucible swapped their minds, or how Aisha brought the Fantastic Four back to life, either. To be fair, if Aisha could destroy them molecularly, then I suppose that there is some logic for her being able to put them back together. But it also feels weird that Claremont would introduce Aisha as this big threat to the team, and then just suddenly switch gears over to Crucible. Is she his pawn in this? Or an ally? Is she a partner? I don't really know, and that frustrates me. I'm also unsure of what trials Crucible is referring to when he talks about testing humanity. In fact, if his plan is to build a superpowered army by implanting normal people into superpowered bodies, then how is he actually testing humanity? Or is his plan to test the formerly superpowered, now normal amount of the populace that he just created? Crucible continues to be vague, self-aggrandizing, and ultimately, for me, just kind of annoying, really. I do like that Claremont has all of the evil Fantastic Three comment on their lack of finesse and control over their powers. The Thing says that he can bend steel, but he can't open a door without destroying it. The Invisible Woman can turn invisible, sure, but she can't see while invisible, which I'll fully admit is something that I don't get. She comments that she needs to train her eyes to see while invisible, and I don't know how you do that, but it's still a nice moment to indicate that this difference in power level isn't just something that the Human Torch is facing. All of these characters are dealing with it. Other than a general lack of depth to Crucible's evil scheme overall, I like this particular story. There is a ton of dialogue here, another facet of Claremont's writing style. Everyone explains absolutely everything that they're doing, and yes, it does give the book a very dry expositional tone. Rather than being an exciting rescue mission against overwhelming odds, this kind of just feels like an instruction manual instead of a story, and that does frustrate me a bit. But there's enough good stuff going on here that I had a better time than I didn't. Issue 12 opens with much of the same, unfortunately. Claremont and LaRocca spend the first 6 pages recapping what Genosha is, how the team got there, and the basic events of issue 11, ending with the swapped Torch's detonation of the building that he was in. Still in their new bodies, Ben, Sue, and Johnny now move through the city on foot. Johnny pauses for a moment, gazing at the ruined building that his powers helped destroy. Despite not being in his own body when it happened, Johnny can't help but feel guilty for the devastation that was wrought, and the lives that were lost due to his powers. Sue does her best to console him. The only way that they can prevent such destruction is to stop Crucible and to get their bodies back. Ben suddenly shouts for the pair to find cover. They have company. A massive armored dirigible floats over the battle-damaged landscape. A group of people open fire with anti-tank missiles and cannons, but it only serves to catch the dirigible's attention. The aircraft opens fire and lays waste to the attackers. Ben comments that the people aren't dead, though. They're still breathing, at least. Before any of them can move, though, a red sports car suddenly drives into the scene. We're told that Ben, who is a former military man, recognizes the car as one of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s flying models. Gunfire peppers the car before it manages to take off and then spins into a crash. Johnny tries to rush forward, wanting to make sure that those inside are okay, but then a glowing, crackling blue square manifests in the air. A squad of armored and armed men step out, and Ben seems to recognize them. They begin to work through the bodies, using a device to scan them. Thus busy, the Unfantastic Three gives a chance to check the car without getting spotted. Inside, Sue, whose new body is smallest, finds a dead driver, 4 children, and 1 white-haired Genoshan magistrate. Magistrates are the general Genoshan soldiers charged with defending their homeland and hunting mutants down. Sue starts to pass the kids outside to Ben. Meanwhile, the soldiers identify which of the unconscious folks have powers and which ones don't. The ones with powers, they'll take, and the ones without, they'll sanitize. Sue can hear the popping of their guns as she works, commenting on how vulnerable she feels without her force fields. She then asks Ben what they're going to do with these kids now that they have them, but it's the magistrate who answers. There's a manhole down the street. If they go down and follow it, then they'll find a safe haven. Ben picks up a rifle from the ground and orders Sue and Johnny to take the kids there. He's going to hold the soldiers here. At first, Sue refuses to do this. She has no intention of abandoning her friend. But Ben reminds her that he's been a soldier before. She and Johnny have not. He understands the costs of combat in a way that they never will. She hugs him, complimenting his bravery and heart, and then she moves on with Johnny and the kids. The magistrate, who we will eventually learn is named Tam, T-A-M, offers Ben another solution. She pulls out a remote bomb and chucks it into the car. The pair then heads toward the manhole cover, waiting until they hear the soldiers approach the vehicle. Once they do, Tam detonates the bomb. She encourages haste as they drop into the sewer tunnels, but they don't get far when they catch up with Sue and Johnny, who, surprisingly, are being handcuffed by other magistrates. Ben turns and finds a gun aimed at his face. Well, this is a fine meet-cute. So the Unfantastic Three are then taken to the Citadel, which is where the magistrates are stationed. Our heroes are still handcuffed, but are now also seated in folding chairs. The Genoshans, which include our Judas, Tam, Hawkshaw of the press gang, and Chief Magistrate Anderson, are questioning them. They know the names of those bodies, yes, but they don't trust that their minds are that of the Fantastic Four. For all they know, this is some kind of elaborate trick to infiltrate the Genoshan forces. Chief Anderson bristles as the door suddenly opens, and in walks Reed Richards, who wants to help. Anderson doesn't want his help, at least not in this matter. This is magistrate business, nerd. At the sight of Reed, though, Sue stands up and rushes over to him. Even if he doesn't recognize this body, he has to recognize who she is. On the inside. She makes a pretty passionate speech about it, too, and the magistrate aims her pistol at Sue in retort. Now step back. Sue refuses, though. This is it. If every technological test says that they're not the Fantastic Four, then she'll have to trust Reed's emotions. Either he believes her or he doesn't. There is nothing else to say here. Reed pauses, looking at Sue's borrowed face, and then he wraps her in his arms, kissing her passionately. I'm sorry, but that's not your body to kiss, you know? But this is a good moment to take stock of things. Like how much I don't like Sue appealing to Reed to somehow see her very soul inside of another body. Her delivery is great, don't get me wrong, it is a passionate as crap speech. And if ever there was a moment where Reed would doubt the technological results, then it would be now when he has lost his genius. But why doesn't she just say something that only Reed would know? Surely there must be a better bit of information that she could give Reed than just, "Trust me, I'm your wife." And I hope I'm not a terrible person for saying this, but I don't really care what happens here. Like, sure, I want all of the Fantastic Four to get their bodies back and to kick Crucible's terribly designed butt, but only in, like, the vaguest of senses. Like, I want that to happen because it must happen, not necessarily because I'm invested in this conflict. Crucible still isn't threatening in the least bit. Aisha is just a big ol' question mark to me, and 20 years of reading X-Men comics have trained me to dislike the Genoshan government's forces. Why not have Reed ally with the rebels, or use the threat of Crucible to force the magistrates to ally with the rebels, so we at least have a coalition force to get behind? I don't sympathize with the very people that we/the Fantastic Four are allied with and are supposed to be saving at all, and so I have very little investment in this conflict. To be fair, Claremont uses the next scene to try to tie all of these things together. The Unfantastic Three put on Fantastic Four costumes, as Reed tells them of Genosha's current situation. It seems that many of the mutates who had fought for freedom at the beginning of the Civil War had died. The government forces had reformed under Chief Anderson and were now trying to establish a new peace, from which forward progress could be made. But then Crucible entered the fray, and mucked the whole thing up, I guess. The Genoshan forces actually tried to contact the Avengers and X-Men first, both of whom have established history with Genosha, but neither of the teams could be reached. So they resorted to kidnapping Reed, hoping that his brilliant mind could give them an edge. And that didn't work out. Reed admits to the team that he had noticed the change in him, the lessness. But losing that inspiration allowed him to see his family and the world in a whole new light. For the first time in years, maybe in his life, Reed was content to just be. Sue tells Reed that she had noticed the change too, but that she had liked it. She didn't want him to lose that newfound passion between them. Johnny suddenly busts in from absolutely nowhere, complaining that he needs to get his body back. Once the swapped Torch has mastered his powers, the potential damage that he could do would be staggering. They have to fight, and they have to get their bodies back. And then Ben speaks up. Somewhere in all of these topics, Ben got the idea that Reed didn't think that they could win this fight. So he gives a rousing speech about how Reed can be a loving father and a brilliant genius, even if it's hard, even if it takes work. Just because it's challenging, that doesn't mean that Reed should just give up. And Reed is like, ouch, dude, that's harsh. But Sue agrees with Ben. Without his genius, however pleasant these past few days have been, Reed just isn't Reed. So they'll find a way to fix him, then fix all of them, and then they'll take down Crucible, right? Right. Thankfully, Reed has a plan. A risky plan, but it's a plan. A plan that gets interrupted by an attack by the body-swapped Fantastic Four, but it's still a plan. The villains move through walls and magistrates with ease, reveling in their newfound powers. The Unfantastic Four, along with Chief Anderson and Magistrate Tam, retreat for the moment. As they do, Reed tells the team that he has built modules into their costume that'll allow them to transfer back into their bodies. While they do that stuff, he will take care of Crucible. Reed generates a transmat portal and, along with Chief Anderson, he goes to fight our big villain. The Unfantastic Three battle their own bodies in order to win them back. Sue manipulates the invisible Farisa into gloating, so despite being invisible, Sue can still hear her, and so she beats the crap out of Farisa with her martial arts training, and we end with a big energy release and like a zap sound effect. Leave it to Claremont to have a character talk so much that they get defeated because of it. Ben then lures the Thing into a prepared room. He taunts his opponent, causing the Thing to swing wildly and with full force. As his punches break open the walls, a sticky adhesive holds him in place. It turns out Reed stole the Trapster's design and laced the walls with it. But the paste was never able to hold the Thing for long when Ben was in the body. And it doesn't hold Jomo for long either. He struggles to lurch toward Ben, who finally makes controlled contact and then does the mental switch. Johnny and Tam, who is only now getting named in story, by the way, so nice job there, wait for the Human Torch, who curses his allies for splitting up. They wait until the Torch is in a specific room, and then Johnny jumps in, and Tam seals the room shut. Johnny, wearing a mask made of the same material as his costume, now faces down the Human Torch. The swapped Torch funnels the full force of his flames at Johnny, who just slowly walks across the room. Once all of the oxygen in the room is burned up, the torch's flames sputter and die. He charges at Johnny, and now that they're tussling, the switch happens one last time. Elsewhere, in the Genoshan Ridgeback Mountains, Mr. Fantastic and Chief Anderson arrive at a facility that Mr. Fantastic recognizes. This place is called the Beehive, and it's run by a group of scientists who call themselves the Enclave. Chief Anderson holds off the Enclave's thugs, buying Mr. Fantastic time to find and defeat Crucible. So, hold up, wait. First, the action scenes dealing with the swapped Fantastic 3 are fast-paced. It's only like 6 pages in total, but I like them. This is a great showing of how superpowers don't make you better. They are a tool like anything else, and how you use them matters. It's really our heroes' training, cunning, and bravery that allows them to get their bodies back, not superpowers, and that's great. Again, kudos to you, Mr. Claremont. Secondly, Johnny mentions that Reed designed their costumes to absorb a blow from the Thing or the heat of the Human Torch's flames. This is why he doesn't get burned when he encounters the Human Torch. This initially comes off as a preventative measure at first. You know, you don't want a teammate to be naked after they flex their muscles or turn their flames on. But this particular moment made me realize that this is a defensive measure. If either the Thing or the Human Torch lost control of their powers or turned on their teammates, then their costumes would give the rest of the team a chance to stand against them and potentially stop them. This is a great bit of practical reasoning that adds a small bit of pragmatism to Reed's design, and I like this a lot. Thirdly, who the floop are the Enclave? Okay, I guess I really do need to get into it. The Enclave was originally 4 scientists who teamed up with the plan of designing a master race that would then rule the world. They created the Perfect Man and named it Him, a golden-skinned male who eventually took on the name of Adam Warlock. But Warlock had no interest in ruling the world, so eventually the Enclave tried again, and this time they created a golden-skinned woman who they named Her. Her's purpose was to breed with the most suitable mate possible, ideally Adam Warlock. However, Adam once more disappointed his dads when he didn't want to have a baby yet, and so Her began adventuring in the Marvel Universe. This led to Her eventually taking on the name Kismet, and eventually she did return to the Enclave. I'm guessing that their experiments and manipulations are what changed Kismet into Aisha, but my understanding was that Kismet was pretty much a heroine. Why she's suddenly so dead set on aiding the Enclave with this plan, I don't honestly know, and this story gives me no character motivation. Most of Aisha's journey was finding herself as a person, so while I'm not a big fan of the character, and I haven't read much about her, I do think that it's kind of stupid and pretty disappointing that she gets regressed back to being a tool of the Enclave. That is years of character work flushed down the toilet. Fun fact, though, the cover to issue 11 here is actually an homage to Fantastic Four Volume 1, issue 67. That issue is Adam Warlock's first appearance, so the cover here hints at Aisha's origins. Fun fact number 2, which you may not have picked up on, I don't know, this Aisha is the inspiration for the Aisha that appeared in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, the MCU movie, and in the end credits scene when Aisha is seen staring at this weird life pod at the very end, that is a reference to Adam Warlock. So it's a weird bit of continuity on the MCU's part, but this is still an interesting way of taking a character like Her/Kismet/Aisha and adapting her into the movies. I like it. Neat little nod. Mr. Fantastic continues to sneak through the Beehive, uncovering tubes of human experiments. Rather than just trying to create a new life form that is perfect, the Enclave has switched gears to uplifting humanity. But, a voice asks, does Mr. Fantastic see why they're experimenting on humans? Can he see the need? Reed turns and sees a middle-aged man named Maris Morlack, one of the Enclave, wearing Crucible's armor, sans the helmet. This is your big reveal? We have spent all of this time wondering who Crucible was and what his game was, and he's some nerd that I haven't even heard of? This is the big climax to your story? Maris, unfortunately, goes on with his speech. The Enclave seeks to better the Earth, so of course they'll need a better version of humanity to go with it. You don't want to break up the set, Reed. But the Enclave had hit a dead end in their research. I mean, all of the perfect beings that they had created had pretty much rebelled against them, so what are you going to do? They decided that they needed new ideas, and so they stole Reed's new ideas. Doing so, however, has begun to drive Morlock mad, though. He is always thinking. He can't sleep. He can barely function. He even spits out a stream of consciousness concept regarding wormholes in mid-fight. Everything that he looks at gives him a new idea on how to improve it. And worse still, he saw Alyssa Moy's data regarding the space-time continuum, last referenced in issue 5. And I don't know how he got that information, but sure, whatever, let's roll with it. Morlock knows what is coming, and even with Reed's genius, he can't find a solution for it. He wants it to just, no swearing, stop at this point. And suddenly it does. A bolt of blue energy hits Morlock in the back, and he burns away, suddenly freed from his suffering. Armed with some kind of energy gun is Vladislav Shinsky, an older member of the Enclave, who is also wearing Crucible's armor. Oh god, what is this crap now? Professor Shinsky claims that, basically, Morlock wasn't fit for the new world, for the Crucible identity, or to be Aisha's mate. I didn't realize that finding Aisha a baby daddy was still an issue here. Anyways, Shinsky opens fire on Mr. Fantastic, but he misses every shot. Mr. Fantastic pulls a lever, douses Shinsky with steam. No swearing. Seriously, that's the best we have here? Attack by slapstick? And Mr. Fantastic then trips Shinsky. Then the now restored to their original bodies Fantastic Four hijack Crucible's dirigible, they join Reed at the Beehive, and they drive off Crucible. Rather than chase him down, though, they elect to save the captives of the Enclave instead. The Fantastic Four load them onto Reed's extended body, the thing pulls Reed's arms up to the dirigible, and then Sue uses her force field to push them all up. And it's a good thing, too. Aisha had confronted Chief Anderson, unsure of why Anderson resists them. After all, the Enclave is the superior force. They're better trained, they're smarter, and they're more skilled. Genosha was already built on a superior force ruling over an inferior force. So, following Genosha's own tactics, Anderson should submit to the Enclave. But Anderson claims to have learned from her own mistakes, and she's going to stop them. The Golden Woman laughs at this. Crucible then arrives, announcing that the Fantastic Four have gotten their bodies back and are on the scene. Aisha says that she will deal with them easily, but Anderson won't give her a chance. She pulls the pin on a black hole grenade. How do you have black hole grenades, but you're losing this fight, Anderson? Christ! The grenade goes off, the event horizon swallows all three of them, including the rest of the Enclave's base, but the Fantastic Four and their ride, piloted by Magistrate Tam, pull away just in time. Sometime later, the Fantastic Four have returned home, and Val Cooper visits Pier 4 once again. While the White House couldn't officially condone the Fantastic Four taking action in Genosha, they were hoping for a positive outcome. And, maybe some useful, actionable intelligence on the situation in Genosha. That had been great. But instead, Cooper explains that there may be serious repercussions for the team breaking the United Nations embargo of Genosha. Johnny asks if the good that they did there means nothing at all. And to the government, yeah, basically. Cooper says that the various governments of the world look at Genosha and fear that all nations will face the same genetic challenges soon, and maybe suffer the same outcome. Val, however, thanks them, if only as a human being, and not as a government representative. Once she leaves, Ben asks Reed if they're going to do anything more about Genosha, and not yet. Reed agrees that there are things clearly in motion, but he'll need a better idea of what those things are before he can make an actionable decision. Ben grimaces. More lab work then? And Reed actually says no. The data will all be there tomorrow. First, he's taking his son and his wife to watch the Yankees play. Oh, and before they go, Reed passes on his next chess move for Alyssa, one that puts her in checkmate. So the final handful of pages in issue 12 are actually penciled by Patrick Zurcher, not Salvador Larroca, and he does an admirable job of them. Given that Larroca has been maintaining the book's monthly pace since issue 5, and the fact that issue 12 is at least double-sized, I'm not surprised that he finally couldn't keep up with the page rate. He does still draw a majority of these pages, and those pages look good. Zurcher's artwork, especially at this point in his career, is fairly pointy as well, so he vaguely fits the style that Larroca had here. His artwork does have some thicker ink lines, which adds greater weight to his figures. I do feel like Zurcher's pages are a bit, lifeless. They do the job, and they communicate what's going on well, but Zurcher clearly doesn't have a footing in regards to the cast yet. Some of his faces and bodies are slightly off as well. It's nothing terrible, but the style change is noticeable as you're reading, and it is a bit of a letdown that our end-of-the-year climax is finished off by someone else. However, given how generally unimpressive that climax is, it's a bit hard to be disappointed in the artwork instead of the writing. The final reveal, or reveals, regarding Crucible do absolutely nothing for me. I am really unfamiliar with the Enclave, and once Morlock and Shinsky stand revealed, I feel like I remain unfamiliar. They're both incredibly one-note. They're just power-hungry scientists who want to take over the world, and they're amongst the most boring interpretations of that cliché that I have ever seen. Morlock was almost interesting. I like him buckling under the weight of how Reed's inspiration works, but then he's torn from the story without a thought. Shinsky is then Morlock without anything interesting going on, save for claiming credit in regards to creating the identity of Crucible. But even if that is true, then why all of the Doctor Doom-related buildup? Which one of these men went to the monastery that Doctor Doom visited in order to craft the armor? Which one of them toyed with Isabella Guire and Gordon Clay? Crucible once had the power to turn people into stone and then back again, so why didn't he use that power here? And what in God's name happened to Aguirre and Clay? Because their plot is literally abandoned. To be fair, I don't know if Crucible's introductory creator, author Scott Lobdell, had more of a plan for who the man was, what his background was, or where he was going to be in the future from the onset. It's totally possible that all that Claremont got was a name, a vague plot outline regarding issue 5, and a character design sheet, and nothing else. The addition of the Enclave to this story really feels like it comes out of nowhere to me, as there was no setup or hints about the Enclave's involvement, there potentially being multiple Crucibles, or even what changes were made to Aisha to get her where her story starts here. I just don't... what is this plot? I keep wanting to say that I don't know what the Enclave wants here, but the story has really told us multiple times that they want world domination. But, I don't want that. That's not a good enough villainous motivation anymore. I want more. I expect more. This isn't the 1960s, damn it. I need more of a motivation than that. At least the Ruins bid for world domination came with a clear threat, the utter and complete transformation of our entire world, and it had some interesting visuals to go with it. But the Enclave have a squat, square Jack Kirby base, a mismatch designed for Crucible that doesn't match Aisha's new design at all, and then we've got the body-swapped Fantastic Four, and they're just wearing, like, leather bondage outfits. That's typically how you can tell a bad guy in a Claremont comic, especially one drawn by Salvador Larroca, the leather outfits and the zippers and the straps. Where is the vision here for a world that exists between these two men? And the worst thing regarding this Crucible reveal? Reed Richards never actually got his genius back. And the story actually makes a point of it. After Shinsky kills Morlock, he outright states that if the Enclave can't make use of Reed's brilliance, then it is better that no one can. But this plot point is never addressed again in this story. The Fantastic Four are too busy saving the experimented upon people to even ask about it. And then, in the ending, when Reed says that he has data to go over and Ben asks if he's going to be in the lab again, it is implied that Reed is back to normal, that, having gotten his genius back, he's going to retreat into familiar behaviors. But then, no, Reed chooses to spend time with his family, which is a nice moment, sure, but it does nothing to resolve whether he has his genius back or not. It makes it feel like Reed is actively choosing to cherish his family over doing his work, which was the big emotional crux for Reed before their assault on the Enclave, but that only works if Reed has taken up his genius, and the responsibilities that go with it, once again. And Claremont just hand-waves over the whole point. This isn't the resolution that you're looking for. I mentioned before that the general situation of Genosha kind of bothered me, and that remains true here at the ending. Despite years of X-Men comics presenting Genoshan characters like Philip Moreau and Jenny Ransom as the heroes of the Genoshan conflict, as they're the leaders of the freedom movement, this story works to re-establish the Genoshan government instead, who are the villains of Genosha. Characters like Chief Magistrate Anderson, Magistrate Tam, and Hawkshaw are traditionally bad guys, working to put down the rebellion and restore the order that is slavery for mutants. However, Claremont sets them up as the eventual winners of that conflict here, and although he does state that they have learned their lesson, it doesn't feel like they have. He tries to demonstrate it with Chief Anderson's encounter with Aisha and her willingness to die in order to keep all of her people free, and I do mean all of her people. But I still haven't seen Philip Moreau or Jenny Ransom in this issue. And actually, the press gang is missing from this story altogether, despite how useful they could have been in this conflict, and how badly I want more information on why Jenny was working with them last issue. From a narrative standpoint, wouldn't it have made more sense for the press gang to kidnap Reed, explain their situation to him, and then just call the Fantastic Four, teleport Reed back home, and then get backup? I mean, they're looking for allies here, not prisoners, and this would have saved us all of the drama of the front half of issue 11, which then would have allowed the rest of the story some more time to breathe. Or even just, knock on the Fantastic Four's door and ask them for help. They've been pretty good about opening the door themselves lately, even if it's at their disadvantage. I mean, they're a pretty approachable group, really. Now, I would argue that the press gang probably stays low in this issue, specifically because they are superpowered. And superpowers is what Crucible wants. It also keeps the narrative focus on the Fantastic Four, as they are, after all, our star characters. But it also creates this gap in storytelling that Claremont doesn't quite address, and that bothers me. I would have loved a single scene of the Unfantastic Three asking for backup because they aren't superpowered and they have to fight their superpowered selves, but then Hawkshaw turns them down in order to protect his team. That'd have been fine. That'd have worked. And we could have just moved the hell on. And then finally, we have this vague looming threat to the universe that, well, everyone seems to know about. We saw Alyssa bring it up in issue 5, Roma gave Reed a data crystal between issues 8 and 9 with information about a multiversal threat, and now Morlock claims to know what's coming, and he fears that no solution exists to that problem. Are these problems all one and the same? Is this a person, an event? What? This isn't a complaint, by the way. I actually have no problem with this here. This feels more like a long-term idea that Claremont is seeding to be explored later, and I actually have a pretty good thought on what that threat is going to be. I just wanted to make it clear that I think something is going on here. I wanted y'all to have the pieces, so that way when we get to the end of the puzzle, it all makes sense to you. Overall, despite pulling together a handful of interesting plot threads, Claremont and LaRocca don't end up making a beautiful bow for us. Instead, they're presenting us with a Gordian knot. This isn't terribly fun or entertaining, it's convoluted, it has characters that I've never heard of that are doing things that don't impress me in order to stave off a threat that is also unknown. Watching the Fantastic Four wrestle with Reed's mental loss was great, I will fully admit that, and I loved seeing how adamant Johnny was about getting his powers back and under his watchful hand. I also enjoyed when Ben volunteered to stay behind and fight the Enclave's soldiers. It is easy to forget that Ben had a life before the Fantastic Four, and so this was a nice reminder of it. The scenes in which the Fantastic Four got their original bodies back was pretty good too, even if it was a little fast. Like with issue 11, I kind of feel like Claremont and LaRocca spent too long on the front half of this issue, setting things up and running around, and then they had to rush things in the back half to bring everything to a close. Unfortunately, this means that we get lackluster villains, a boring plan, and are kind of left with a bad taste in my mouth. There are good moments in this comic, sure, but that doesn't mean that this is a terribly good comic. And for a book called The Fantastic Four, with the tagline, "The World's Greatest Comic Magazine," printed on the cover, that's kind of awful. I feel really bad saying that too, because that's where we're going to leave things for a moment. This first year of Fantastic Four Volume 3 has been a rough one, and I've been low-key horrified to see the last episode get to an hour in length, and I'm a little scared of how long this one is. There's just been so much to talk about in these Claremont-focused issues that it is taking me quite some time to break them down, and I'm beginning to feel the burnout from it. So I'm going to pause the Fantastic Four here for a few weeks. Don't worry, we will be back. It's going to take 7 more episodes just to get us to the main goal of this collection, meaning the Heroes Reborn 5th week event, and I just don't have it in me to plow through them all right now. So I'm going to be switching things up big time next week. Given how much I enjoyed Gail Simone's run on The Secret Six, and given how many ideas The Secret Six picked up from Gail's other DC title, The All-New Adam, I've been putting together a collection of that book recently. It has similar themes to the Fantastic Four, mainly that of scientific exploration, but with a very big dose of Simone's offbeat sense of humor and storytelling style. The All-New Adam has been a lot of fun to read and explore, and I'm looking forward to bringing y'all some new stuff. I figure that I'm going to run probably 3 episodes of The Atom, which will complete the first story arc of the book, and then I'll start with the Fantastic Four again. I'll probably do another break after I finish these next 7 episodes, then do a little more Atom, and then we'll finally hit the Heroes Reborn event in all of its glory, finally. I'm also kind of toying with doing some one-shot episodes that are built around some graphic novels that I have, but we'll see where my interests take me. And thus, next week, scientific genius Ryan Choi journeys to America in search of his mentor, Ray Palmer, the shrinking superhero better known as the Atom. But life in Ivytown is very different from Ryan's life in China, and becoming the all-new Atom doesn't make it any easier. Join me for episode 13.1, The All-New Atom. Death or Submission. Everyone, there are a million podcasts vying for your time and attention, and I'd like to thank you for listening to mine. If you would like to get in touch with me, to share a concern, request a series, compliment me, berate me, whatever you like, send me an email at cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Otherwise, thanks for listening.